My name is Alina Vance, and I am 32 years old living in the cold and busy city of Chicago, Illinois. I used to think that hard work was the only thing that mattered in the professional world, but I learned the hard way that one powerful person with a grudge can destroy everything you have built. For 5 years, I gave my life to a marketing agency called Skyline Creative. I was the senior project manager and I handled the biggest accounts in the city. My boss was a man named Julian Thorne. Julian was the kind of man who wore expensive suits to hide a very cheap soul. He was a narcissist who thrived on making people feel small. For a long time, I put up with his temper tantrums and his habit of taking credit for all my ideas because the pay was good and I loved my clients. But everything changed when I was passed over for a promotion that Julian had promised me for 2 years. Instead of giving it to me, he gave it to his nephew who did not even know how to open a spreadsheet. When I confronted Julian about it, he laughed in my face and told me that I should be grateful I even had a desk in his office. That was the moment I knew I had to leave. I spent the next month quietly applying for jobs at other firms in Chicago. Because of my experience and my portfolio, I started getting interviews almost immediately. I finally landed an offer at a rival agency that came with a 40% raise and a much better title. I walked into Julian's office and handed him my 2-week notice with a smile on my face. I thought I was free, but Julian looked at me with a cold and calculating stare and told me that I would regret leaving him. He said that Chicago is a small city for people in our industry and that he would make sure I never worked in marketing again. I thought he was just blowing off steam because he was angry about losing his best employee, but I soon realized he was dead serious. A few days before I was supposed to start my new job, the hiring manager called me and told me that they were rescinding the offer. They said that they had received some troubling information during a final background check and that they did not think I would be a good fit for their company culture. I was devastated and confused. I had no criminal record and my performance reviews were always perfect. Then it happened again. I got another offer from a different firm and 3 days later they canceled it without a real explanation. This happened 4 times in a row. I was 32 years old and I was suddenly radioactive. I was sitting in my apartment overlooking the Chicago River feeling like my entire career was over. I knew it was Julian. He was blacklisting me. Every time a company called for a reference check, he must have been telling them horrible lies about me. I tried to call human resources at my old company, but they told me that Julian handled all professional references for the senior staff personally. I was trapped. I was running out of money and my reputation was being dragged through the dirt. I felt like I was at the bottom of a deep dark hole with no way out. That was when I decided to fight back. I knew that I could not just accuse him of lying because I had no proof. I needed to catch him in the act. I called my friend Marcus, who works as a private investigator. I told him the whole story and he agreed to help me set a trap for Julian. We decided that Marcus would pretend to be a high-level executive from a fake investment firm in New York City. We created a professional-looking website and a fake LinkedIn profile for this pretend company. Then Marcus called Julian and told him that they were considering me for a very high-paying vice president position. Marcus told Julian that they just needed a quick verbal reference to confirm my character before they signed the contract. I sat in Marcus's office and listened on speakerphone while the call went through. When Julian answered the phone, he sounded like the most professional and helpful man in the world at first. But as soon as Marcus mentioned my name, Julian's voice changed. He became hushed and secretive, as if he was doing Marcus a huge favor by telling him the truth. Julian told Marcus that I was a thief who had been caught stealing company funds. He said that I was emotionally unstable and that I had been fired for having a physical altercation with another employee. None of it was true. It was all pure fiction designed to destroy my life. Julian told Marcus that he was only telling him this man to man so that Marcus would not make the mistake of hiring a monster like me. Marcus thanked him and hung up the phone. I was shaking with anger, but I was also relieved because I had recorded the entire conversation. I did not go to the police and I did not go to a lawyer first. Instead, I went directly to the owner of the agency, who was a wealthy woman named Alina who lived in a penthouse on Michigan Avenue. Alina had always liked me, and she had no idea what Julian was doing behind her back. I sent her the audio file and a long letter explaining how Julian had cost me 4 different jobs by telling malicious lies. I also included my actual performance reviews that showed I was a top performer. Alina was horrified. She knew that Julian's lies opened the company up to a massive lawsuit that could cost them millions of dollars. The next morning, Julian was called into a meeting. He thought he was going to get a bonus, but instead he was met by Alina and the head of the legal department. They played the recording for him and watched his face turn white. He tried to claim it was a joke or that he was being misquoted, but the evidence was undeniable. Julian was fired on the spot for gross misconduct in violation of company policy. Because he was fired for cause, he did not get any severance pay and his reputation in the city of Chicago was ruined instantly. But I was not finished yet. Alina offered me a huge settlement to keep me from suing the agency, and she also personally called the 4 companies that had rescinded their offers to tell them the truth. One of those companies was so embarrassed by what happened that they offered me a director-level position with an even higher salary than before. I took the job and I have been there for 6 months now. I am happier than I have ever been and my new team actually respects me. As for Julian, he has been unable to find work anywhere in the Midwest. A few weeks ago, I heard from a former coworker that Julian had applied for a mid-level job at a firm where my new boss is a partner. My boss asked me if I knew anything about Julian Thorne, and I just smiled. I told my boss that Julian was a very interesting person, and then I handed him the recording I made. My boss laughed and threw Julian's resume in the trash can. It felt like the perfect ending to a very long nightmare. I learned that you should never let a bully win, and sometimes you have to play a little dirty to get the justice you deserve. I'm still living in Chicago, and every time I walk past my old office, I hold my head a little higher knowing that the man who tried to bury me ended up digging his own professional grave.